give you a countdown in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good luck, Max.
Good luck, sir.
All right. So, just to get started here, we are this wonderful hero who is currently lying in bed taking a nice nap. But we're going to go ahead and wake up because this is our 16th birthday and we have a very important job to do at the castle. So, just as a quick point of order, many of you may be familiar with the Dragon Quest name. Dragon Warrior and Dragon Quest are actually the same series. There was a trademark issue when these games were first released in the United States. They could not use the Dragon Quest name, which was the original name of the game in Japan. But that has since been resolved, and the recent games are all called Dragon Quest, but these are in fact the same series. So here we are going up to listening to this wonderful castle music as we go up and talk to the king. And he is going to give us our mission, which we will find out is to defeat a great evil, because that is, after all, what heroes do. See, our enemy is the Archfiend Baramos, who is apparently going to destroy the world. And since the world is in such danger, the king gives us a fortune with which to equip ourselves, his fortune being 50 gold.
50 gold.
50 gold. And then
Yes, you will see just how far 50 gold gets you in this world in just a moment. As you may guess, the answer is not much. I have sometimes wondered if Baramos is actually this great evil he's made out to be, because if it's only worth 50 gold to the king to defeat him, then, you know, whoops, slight mistake. Sorry about that. Controller, please. Excuse me. So, you see, we had 50 gold. We now have 25 gold. And we now have 0 gold.
Back to the king for more, right?
like I'm out.
So, but there are actually some other little things we can do later on, so we won't worry about that for a moment. Instead, we are going to go find some friends to help us on our journey. So,
if anyone's not familiar with Dragon Warrior 2, the Wings of the Wyvern that you just bought are the teleport item in this game. They can send you back to any town that you've been to before.
Yes, and so I may need to re-roll these characters a couple of times because there are very specific agility values I need. So let's see what we get here. A 4 is not good enough, so we need 5 agility on that character, so we're going to re-roll. When I do normal runs, I have a specific set of names that will give me the particular agility values, other stats that I need. But since you donated for this wonderful name, we are going to get creative and give similarly wonderful names to our other characters. So here is we don't get a good agility, so we're gonna have to re-roll this one as well. Actually, host, if you have a donation, this might be a good time because this will take just a moment.
Okay, I'll read this one since it's a bit of a throwback. Rodimus donated $50 and said they were so distracted by the Castlevania runs that I forgot to donate during them. Circle of the Moon was the first Castlevania I dug into, and here I am 17 years later still playing them often. I've gotten so old, but thank you, Rodimus.
Thank you very much for your donation. Wow, we are not getting this agility here. It's,
So this run's pretty well RNG manipulated, and it may not look evident at first, but the walking is super important in this, and yeah, he got a good agility roll there.
Mm-hmm. Particularly when he's on the overworld, too.
Yeah, so we'll be hoping that I do not make any more mistakes like I just did a moment ago, because at this point in the run, they are not that important. Later on, they will be much more of an issue. So we have our 3 characters, and we are now going to go out and take some of them with us. So this was actually a feature first introduced in Dragon Warrior 3, in which you can create your own party. So the game actually gives you 3 characters ahead of time. You can see them here, Ragnar, Elucidus, and Hiram in this case. And we are going to use 2 of those. And so you'll start with Ragnar, a soldier. The soldier class in this game is your typical attacker-type class. We also have Pilgrim, who is your healer, and Wizard, who is the attacking magic user. So our command has brought Fight and Item with him, and going to head out into the wide world and see what awaits us. So just a quick bit of inventory manipulation here that will come in useful later.
Yep.
And let us see if we can find some enemies. Let us see if we can find some enemies.
Hello.
Enemies, hello.
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 There we go.
There we go. Okay, so slimes, wonderful. We know what we do with slimes. We attack ourselves.
So what Vaxherd's actually trying to do here is kill off fight an item. That's going to be important later on in the game.
Yeah, because in addition to RNG manipulation, this run does also use some pretty major glitches too, and this is kind of one of the first stages of setting up for a pretty game-breaking glitch he's going to be doing.
Yeah, things will get even more interesting later, but for the moment we are going to take these two ghosts and store them at the Luisa's place, which is the party storage area.
Yeah, Luisa is open to all, alive or not.
Indeed.
She takes ghosts, it's no big deal. Nothing like a haunted Luisa's place to hang out and join a band of adventurers.
Okay, so we've left them, and now we're going to take two more characters out of here. So we're going to take the wizard Elucidus, who is created for us, and we're going to take Spell with us. And then we're going to reset because I did not actually screw up, but there is a very clever thing we're going to do here.
As you may have noticed before he did any changes to his party, he got prompted to save the game, and that's much faster than going back to the castle and talking to the king, which is kind of the primary way you save in this game.
We will be using her as a substitute king for at several points in this run. But you notice I just created a file. So this is, again, a slight change from my usual route. Normally, I have a specific set of names which I use in the run to guarantee me the proper RNG seed. I'll talk about the seeds later on in a bit. But for the name incentive, we can't quite get that, and so we need to call in the doctor. This is a separate file. We are going to be repeating a little bit of what you just saw, but this particular file is set up so that I can get a battle on the first step into the overworld, and that will tell me what my current RNG seed is.
RNG being random number generator. If anybody's not familiar with speedrun lingo, it's just a term we often use to talk about random or pseudo-random elements in games.
So this might be another good point where you could read off a donation or two.
Okay, first I will tell those out there who might donate that we will have a lot of time for donations during this run at a later point. So if you want a chance for your comment to be read on air, it's actually a great time to get one in. I just wanted to read Super Seagulls here with $25 saying, I'm excited to see Dragon Warrior 3 destroyed. Command hype?
Command?
Command. So what may not be completely evident right here, too, is that Vaxherd has to walk perfectly to get what he's looking for here. So any missteps, any accidental opens of the item menu, any bonking into walls, and that'll mess him up a little bit.
Yeah. It is precise, but the game only checks for inputs every 16 frames, which is a frame is a 60th of a second on the NES. So it's precise, but he does have a little leeway with what he does.
And if you're wondering why I stopped there for a moment, the actions in this turn will actually tell me what I need to do. And so I was looking up. I have a table that tells me exactly where I am in this particular RNG sequence, therefore what I need to do to get back to where I need to be. So with that done, we are actually going to get back to our original file and get on with the run. Command?
Command. Yep, so Vaxherd's going to be doing a lot of stuff with this RNG here, and you can kind of suss it out a couple different ways. You can watch for steps that the characters are taking with their feet, or you can use music. So Vaxherd's going to do that right now, so I'm going to shut up.
So just like that, I was able to use that music cue. It is actually interesting that you can just sit on the overworld to skip an encounter, which is what I was doing there. There is a location that you go to much later in the game called the Ghost Ship. Normally it is not, it is not unlocked until you get to a specific point in the plot. But in fact, it is always wandering on the overworld, randomly moving across the seas. And every time it moves, it uses up a bit of randomness. And talk a little bit later about what using up randomness means. It's a very specific part of this manipulation. But the end result is that you can just sit on the overworld and the RNG will move past the place where an encounter occurs, and we can just continue on our way.
But kind of the flip side of that, though, is that that means that his movement needs to be very spot on when he's on the overworld, or else because he doesn't want that ghost ship to move more or advance the RNG more than he wants it to, or else that'll throw off his manipulation route.
So nice, quiet jaunt through the tower.
Yeah, there are allegedly monsters in this tower.
I've heard those rumors as well,
Yeah.
but I have never seen any, so I think those are just rumors.
So I picked up the Thieves' Key, which is going to allow us to unlock some doors here early. And then he's going to warp back to Eliahan
And he has to, too,
Yeah.
otherwise, because he's kind of right on the verge of getting into another encounter based on the manipulation route. And with the state that the game's currently in, if he did get into an encounter at this point, it would actually soft lock the game, because due to a bug in how the game kind of assigns monsters to the encounter group, it would try to assign an infinite number of monsters at this point, and that would soft lock the game.
Right, so he actually...
that was a critical mistake, so I'm afraid we will have to redo that part. I apologize. So as we were discussing just a moment ago, this part of the run is very tightly manipulated. Unfortunately, if we open the menu and then close it, that still consumes one step of time, and at this point in the run, we have no steps that we can spare.
Yeah, because in that town there are randomly moving NPCs that call that RNG every step, basically. So so like you said, his route is very tight as far as all of the menu inputs.
So on the upside, if you enjoyed the tower music, you will have another opportunity to hear it now. So we are going to go through this, and just to be, to be perfectly fair to the monsters, there are in fact monsters in this cave and in the tower. However, we have routed them out by virtue of a glitch in the game, which I call seed lock. So again, this ties back to the discussion of RNG seeds. Put very simply, an RNG, random number generator, is a mathematical function. The seed is the input to that function. So, like y equals f of x, for those of you who recall your mathematics studies. The x is the seed, and the y is the random number that you get out of it. There is a glitch which causes, for specific inputs, for specific seeds, the random number will always be the same. And by doing that, we can essentially turn off the encounters for a very large sequence of steps, which is just what's happening now.
About 200 steps.
Yeah.
Which is just enough to get through this entire tower.
Yep, and so after he got out of here and winged back to Eliahan, you'll notice you would have noticed he cast Heal with his Pilgrim. That was actually also to advance the RNG and avoid an encounter.
Yeah, in Dragon Warrior 1, you can always avoid encounters by waiting to advance the RNG, but because of some of these soft lock issues, sometimes you have to cast a spell to advance the RNG properly. And I believe you always have to do that in caves, because caves work a little differently because they don't have NPCs calling for random numbers.
That's correct. So going to go for this once again. You've now seen why I usually call this the town boss. So let you guys talk about why exactly this is so horrible.
Yeah, it's any misstep in your menuing and the run's basically over, and you have to reset and start over from the last save. And so the tool shop here, we're going to be selling some stuff: the soldier's leather armor, the pilgrim's club. Things like that.
Yeah, these first two sales he's doing are actually as part of setup for the slime ending incentive that I'm hoping has been met by this point.
Oh, yes.
Because he needs an extra 10 gold to buy an antidote herb as part of setting up that incentive later on.
So we're going to get just enough money for what we need here. And we're going to go and talk to him again and buy stuff.
So what he's going to do is he's going to buy some medical herbs for command. And and at least one wing, maybe
Two wings,
So
yeah.
you are going to do 2 wings. Okay, so
Yeah.
2 wings that he's going to give to the wizard. And the antidote for the slime setup.
Okay, so step 1 is done. Now on to step 2, which is the scary fast loading screen. Raptor, do you have any trouble with this guy?
I haven't lately, but when I first started learning this, yes, because you're only going 1 step down and 1 step left, talking to this guy, then going 1 step right and up real quick. I have bonked into that wall so many times
Yeah.
when I first started learning this, and that advances the RNG because of the people moving around in an unfavorable way. So you have to reset that too. So he's going to buy this leather helmet and give it to his pilgrim as part of the glitch later on. And now we're going to leave.
We got through the time boss. All right. Thank you. It only took 2 tries. Second try easy every time. So going to head down here to a little cave.
Yeah, this part's a little more relaxed, although once he actually gets going in the cave, he does have a pretty difficult encounter skip that will be quiet and let him hear an audio cue for.
Yeah. But if you have a quick donation, probably get one in right now.
Okay, Brian donated $25 and said, excellent move.
Nice.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so you may have noticed we picked up a magic ball earlier. It's essentially a plot coupon we're going to consume right here.
Rip eyeballs. I mean. So another thing you will have noticed is that in the last screen, he actually transferred the Wayfarer's clothes on the Pilgrim to back to the Pilgrim. What it is just moved it to the bottom of his list because we want the leather helmet on top for the glitch.
Yeah. So there's a lot of inventory manipulation because there are only certain points in the inventory that we can glitch. And there was a mention about an encounter skip, and that's coming up right here. So I'm going to be quiet and count steps.
Nice.
And again, a heal is required here. Fortunately, the sprite movement is really easy to track, and it's a great indicator throughout the run of how far you've walked for things like this.
Because a lot of the similar skips like this that he's going to be doing in dungeon areas, or he can just use landmarks on the dungeon map in order to figure out where he needs to do it. But since he's in this kind of long, featureless hallway there, he either has to use the music or as a cue, or just count the steps, or the waving of the hero's sword, or something like that.
In that particular case, I actually started that using a music cue because I generally find music cues easier to go by. But in that case, the music cue actually does not work because the time it takes to load the map is not consistent. I'm not entirely sure why, but it just from run to run, there's slight variation enough that relying on the music cue turned out not to be reliable, and so I'm just going by steps now.
Yeah, and even then counting those steps because the hero's feet are very light colored, and so is the floor of that dungeon.
Yeah.
You have to really kind of focus on it. And I've missed it a couple times too because of that.
Yeah. So we're going to have one more encounter skip up here really quickly. Again, we're going to use, this time we're going to do 2 heals. So I should have 2 medical herbs in here I can use. And I need to count a few steps out, and then we'll get going again. Okay, so with that, we're going to head on to our next destination. You may have noticed we passed a castle down there. Don't worry about that. It's not important.
They'll be fine. They'll find their own crown.
Yeah.
Yep. So we entered Cave just as it turned into nighttime, and that's because we want the tool shop owner to be asleep so we can borrow something from him.
Yeah, and then Knave at night does not have randomly moving NPCs, so the manipulation route's a bit looser here, but if he bonks into walls, that can complicate it a bit.
Yeah, it is possible to recover, but it's risky. So fortunately, that did not become a problem, and we can go on a mountain tour. Now, I was talking earlier about how we arrange for all the encounters to occur in like a bunch with the seed lock glitch. Well, the problem is we need an encounter now because we want one of our characters to become numb. The problem with that is that since we just skipped an encounter, we have a whole bunch of steps before the next one. and no good way to get to it. So we're just going to take a quick little tour around these wonderful mountains here.
Yeah, this upcoming encounter is the whole reason for kind of coming this far into the storyline, too, just because this is our kind of earliest opportunity to get a monster that can inflict the numb status.
Oops, that's not good. So, fortunately, we have a workaround for this. May involve us dying and restarting, but let's see. So that was a bit of poor luck, I'm afraid, but we have a way to work around it. All right, Wing of the Wyvern.
Yeah, I got a brief glimpse just yesterday of just how much work was put into making this game marathon safe, especially with different names for the main characters, and it is extremely impressive. Basically, we have contingencies for every possibility, and the RNG works a little bit differently in Dragon Warrior 3 than in Dragon Warrior 1. There's a lot more extra to have to cover yourself for, so it's just super impressive to me.
Yeah. So ideally, we would have liked that soldier to survive that hit, but unfortunately, we had a little bit of damage earlier. Ideally, I should have noticed that and done the recovery, but. I failed, I am sorry. And so we will do a little bit of recovery here. We have a nice friend here in Luisa's place who will give us some money to recover with. So if you'll give me just a moment to pull that out. So what I'm going to do is I am going to grab this wonderful fellow's armor, sell it off, and use that to recover our characters and then get us back to where we were a moment ago. So yes, we want to add this new fellow, Mr. Run.
So in Dragon Warrior 3, basically whenever you take an action in a battle, there's a piece of RNG that is saved in SRAM that will change as soon as you take an action in battle, and that makes it so basically we can't just reset and go back to where we were. We have to do some in-game changes, and Vaxherd has a very in-depth knowledge of how that RNG works, so there's all sorts of complicated contingencies.
Yeah, so we are going to pull our friend's spell back out here. So it's going to take just a minute. What I'm going to do next is sell this. I'm going to pick up, noticed I used up a couple of Wings of the Wyvern, so I will need to get those back. I will also need to revive my characters. So with all those, I need a bit of money. So take care of that. And I'm going to revive them, go back, and then if you recall, I called in the doctor earlier to adjust the RNG, so we're going to do that once more. So while I'm doing that, there's probably time for a couple of donations if you want to read some of those off.
All right, Geister Carl donated $25 and said, I know 50 gold doesn't get you far in Dragon Warrior 3. Maybe these $25 help a little more?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, they will.
Random Effect with $50 says,
Nice.
Hey, Vaxherd, good luck
hey,
on
Random.
the DW3 run. Your work on both this route and the Taz inspired me to run the category. And I want to say thank you to both you and PJ for all of your help. I'm ready for all that spam.
Thank you, Random. Yeah, Random is another great guy who has picked up this run recently. And he's done a great job. I think he's down to about 48 minutes,
Yeah,
which
he's
is
about
a
48.
really solid time. So thank you for your donation.
So he does need a bit of extra money to revive these characters, but not that much, just because it's the fee for revival is based on the character's level, and these are all level 1 right now, so it's just 10 gold each.
And interestingly, money is never a problem in a game where you can recruit new characters who are automatically wearing armor at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a very convenient feature. So we are going to go over here. Let's see, we should actually heal ourselves up. Spell, okay. So make sure that this time everybody has all the hit points they need. One more herb. This last herb we're getting is for RNG manipulation again. You'll be seeing a lot of that later in the run as well. But this is how we move things around. So here we're just going to do a quick save, and we're going to call in the doctor. So again, we're going to have to go through that initial sequence. That's unfortunately unavoidable. So donation time.
Sure. Let's start off with the big one. $700 from Fangamer.
Wow.
Nice.
Their comment, mine own goodness, 'tis timeth for the Dragon Warrior. Taketh this donation to aid thee in thy journey. Valorous luck. Thank you, Fangamer.
Excellent. Thank you, Fangamer.
Auroras with the $10 says, Vax, be sure to herd your party in the quickest manner. Good luck on the run. Let's not soft lock.
I will do my best. Thank
Cross
you.
your fingers. Beta Strep donated $150 saying, of donation money, thou hast gained $150.
Nice. Excellent.
Darth Bear B is delighted.
Yes, he
I'm
is.
certain he is, yes.
We have $50 from TW Roxas, who says, had to donate during Dragon Warrior 3. Best of luck to Vaxherd. Command, item, wait.
Okay, so we're just getting down out here. So again, this is going to be the same as we saw earlier. We're going to walk outside the town, going to get an encounter on the first step, and then I'll be looking at my chart again to see exactly what we need to do to get back to.
Because what he's doing is he's resetting his battle seed basically in order to be able to kind of script out the encounters and the once he switches back to his actual speedrun file.
Yeah, so we talked a moment ago about this bit of RNG state, which is stored in the save RAM, and that's what we're going to be adjusting now. So let's check my chart here. Okay.
It's worth noting while he's doing this that while you have to be very precise with your movement on the overworld, whenever you're in battle or there is a menu open, like if you're moving around items or casting a spell using wings, you don't have to be very precise in your inputs because the RNG is essentially just waiting for you to act. And so,
because like in battle, it doesn't change until you confirm the last character's action.
Right.
There we go. So let's see.
And that's very fortunate when there's so much to go through. I can't stress that enough. There's so much data for making this marathon safe.
And him changing the message speed on that E question mark file wasn't a misstep too. That was part of his setup.
You know, I do need to pull up my notes for this room because this is a mistake that I rarely make. So I sincerely apologize.
There we go. That
Looks
should be the right
good,
encounter, yeah.
All right. Okay, this time, hopefully everything will go as it should. Right.
So what you'll see now Vaxherd did was with the hero, he parried and then actually hit B to go back into the hero's turn and then hit fight. And that's this game has a nice little, we'll call it a feature, I guess.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah, sure.
if you parry with any of the first three characters and then go back to their turn and do something, the parry still sticks. And
And that the parry status halves the amount of damage you take on the next round of combat. So being able to both have that and be able to attack is nice. Those little hesitations there, by the way, too, were more manipulation, because when you have the numb status, you can randomly break out of it just through overworld movement, and he was dodging specific windows where if he took a step, he would get unnumbed.
So the hardest part of the run is actually over, and I am relieved. So yes, I'm sorry it went so jitteringly, but things should go a little bit more smoothly from this point out. I am making a backup save here because for the next part of the run, which is where we actually do the fun glitching, there is a chance that we can glitch out a part of the game to make it uncompletable at all. And so just in case that happens, fairly rare. But I've had it happen before.
That wing there is just to get out of the castle faster.
Yeah, that's why I bought an extra wing. As I think Raptor was saying, I usually get only one, but having the extra one makes it that much faster to get back here to Luisa's. So here we're going to bring back our soldier, Mr. Ragnar.
Yeah, who still has the numb status? 'Cause
Yeah.
that got preserved when he was left at Luis's.
Yeah, now we're going to leave our wizard Elucidus first. So that is going to leave Ragnar as the only living character in the party. Now, normally you would expect the game would not let you leave your last living character. But there is an interesting bug, so let's see what happens.
Spooky.
Well,
Ghost party.
2 spoopy, 5 me.
so here we can bring back fight and item. If you recall at the very beginning, we turned them into ghosts as well. And we are going to have a ghost party. Ooh.
Now this is going to confuse the heck out of this game, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to come down here. I'm going to do one quick inventory manipulation here. And then we're going to walk out into the overworld and take a close listen to this music because I'm going to change around reality a bit. We're going to do one more cycle, and then we'll start talking about exactly what sort of insane stuff is going on in the background. Okay, so one of you guys want to take stuff because I've got a bunch of menuing to do.
Yep. So what Vaxhard was doing there, he was using the music to determine when to walk, and so when he was taking the damage, because he's all ghost and they all have 0 hit points, the game doesn't really know what to do with the damage and just starts kind of slinging it down the code, and it kind of stops based on where he takes that step.
Yeah, because he's kind of abusing code where the game checks if you're standing on a swamp tile in the overworld and should be taking damage, and it kind of normally counts how many living characters you have, but it can't really count up to 0 is the problem when you don't have any living characters, so it's kind of, it's exceeding the boundaries of where in the game's memory your character's party, your party members' data is stored, and then it's trying to subtract hit points from just other parts of memory, which is having some very special effects now.
So we're going to have a few more cycles that look just like this. And hopefully they all go that smoothly, but there is a chance. This is the one point in the game where RNG actually plays a material part. And so we're going to pray that that doesn't actually become an issue.
Yeah, so notice he now has the rainbow drop, which is an endgame quest item. He has a black raven, which is a monster that's outside this castle.
Yeah, you'll see what that does
later. He has
later.
a red orb equipped, which is another quest
Yes,
item.
it is most fascinating. So we're going to do another cycle here. So I did make a slight mistake earlier. I'm going to change the set of steps I take for this cycle. There is a Shield of Heroes, which I need to move onto the hero before it gets glitched into something else. And we should also now have a Sphere of Light, which is a wonderful item that will come in handy later in the game. And and by the way, there's another thing I should probably show you. One of our pilgrims here has a bunch of nice spells down there. It's another facet of this glitch.
Yeah, you got the game to basically subtract a hit point from his pilgrim's spell list.
And another thing he did that we won't be readily able to show you is that he subtracted a hit point from his warp list, and now Remolder's in his warp list. So he'll be able to go there even though he's never been there.
Very important to allow us to skip about an hour of in-game plot.
Oops. So this is one of the unfortunate things that can happen. The game suddenly recognizes that something isn't quite right, and reminds you that one of your characters is dead. That's very kind of it, but unfortunately that is actually not something we need, so we're going to have to redo that one step. So you can now see that we have Armor of Radiance, basically. Okay. So we have a Sword of Kings. Unfortunately, we are probably going to lose that, and so we're going to have to take an extra cycle later on to get it out. So now we have our commands in the proper order, for those of you who may have been worried about the spell coming first. Do a little bit of dancing here again.
I believe for that cycle he had to do that dancing in order to prevent the menu from popping up from being idle too long, because that would have messed up the timing for his manipulation cycle there.
Yeah, that's right. So I'll go into more detail a little bit later, but we are in fact using the music itself to glitch the game, and so I have to step on very specific notes, and if I let the status box pop up like this, then it turns out, if you give me just a moment, get a few steps in here. It turns out that one of the steps we need, we can't get if that status box pops up because it is only 10 frames long, and a single step cycle is 16 frames. So we just skip right over it. And so I believe we should be almost done. Nope, we lost Sword of Kings, so you'll just have to do that. One more cycle in just a moment, but that won't take very long. We are almost done with this. So for those of you who want me to get on with it, I am almost there.
Yep.
Come on, we need to go fight Baramos. That's what
who?
we're here for.
Who?
Who's Baramos?
Who is this Baramos you talk about? Oh, he's that guy that the king wanted to pay us 50 gold for. Forget him.
It's 50 gold. We don't care.
Yeah. So we do want the Sword of Kings because it is a very wonderful sword.
It's basically the strongest sword in the game for the hero that also casts the Infirmost spell if you use it in battle.
Which is crazy that it loses that ability in Dragon Warrior 1. It's the Sword of Erdrick in Dragon Warrior 1.
Yeah. So we need the Sword of Kings, and so we are going to buy clothes.
Makes sense to me.
So we're going to come out here and do, this should be our last cycle. So just need to do 2 more steps to tweak that, and we will be ready to go.
Yep, that should be it.
And just like that. Just double check. We do, in fact, have
All
a Sword of Kings
right.
there. So with that done, we do need a little bit more money. So if you recall, Black Raven is an enemy. So normally they are very vicious, not domesticated. There are rarely domesticated Black Ravens. And as you can see, they are very popular among the gentry. And so with our newfound fortune, we are going to go ahead and pick up some useful items. We're going to get a Wing of the Wyvern. A late-game town was mentioned earlier. We need to have a way to get there. And we're going to pick up some herbs because we always need herbs. Healing is great, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So
And we're going to be going on a humanitarian effort here in a little bit and use those herbs.
Indeed. So we're going to need to pick up about 4 more of these, and then we're actually going to go ahead and revive our characters. And as the healer from Dragon Warrior 2 says, it's a very delicate operation. It may take a little while. And so since it will take a little while, why don't we see if we have any donations?
We do indeed. Mint Kuro sent in $10 and said, "Have to donate for Dragon Warrior 3? It was always my favorite Dragon Warrior game growing up, and I have so many memories with it. All hail Loto and Erdrick. Also, praise the sun." Here's Hawkeye7704 with a $50 and says, "Can't even tell you how stoked I am that my favorite game of all time is being ran at GDQ. Enjoying all the Dragon Quest love we've seen this year. Good luck, Vaxerd. Thus a legend was born."
Yes, thank you very much.
There is $25 from Anonymous who says, "I wanted to donate during my favorite RPG series. Shout out to Vax, NES Card, and the other runners of this series. Good luck."
So we're one by one restoring our commands to their rightful place in our menu. So we got 2 more to go here. Spell and item. And as you can see, we actually won't need anywhere near this much money, but a little more money never hurts.
So a nice thing about having this much money too is, so another side effect of the glitch that Vaxherd did is that the 2 pilgrims and the 2 pilgrims more likely than anything could potentially lose some of their max HP. And if they go too far down, Vaxherd's going to have to buy some magic armor and remolder to make sure they don't die. And having that much money will make that happen.
Yeah, because the other glitched item that he could get and sell to afford the revival and the herbs and stuff here is called a stick slime, but I think that's only like 270 gold.
277, I think. Yes.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't really be much leeway there.
It looks like his HP is good though,
Yeah, the
so we
HP
don't worry
is
about
good.
it.
Yep. So I just need to do a little bit of inventory manipulation. Unfortunately, this game is very verbose about moving things around, so this will take just a moment. But we do want the Sword of Kings at the top for the battles we're going to be doing later. So unfortunately, the only way to do that is just one by one move each of these items.
And that's not really
to the
for
bottom.
glitching or anything. That's just for convenience, so that it's at the top of his list when he wants to use it.
So with that done, I will make this one final check before I erase our safety save. And yes, there is a wonderful town name in there that we have not yet visited. So we are all set to get going.
So fortunately, precision is not required for this section because we're done with our fighting until our next save. And once we save, everything is going to be set for the next section.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to once again save here at Luisa's place. And another reset. So we're going to be going through this a few more times because we need to set up another file. If you noticed in my menu, I have this E ? File, which I have been using to set up the RNG. We're going to do something similar, but with a different name this time. And actually, I needed to reset before I do that. So give me just a moment. I will need to go do a couple more resets here. Fundamentally, what we're doing here, we talked earlier about the battle seed, which is stored in the save RAM and is shared between all the different files. Since it is shared between all the files, we can set up a file on a different number, change that battle seed, come back to our original game, continue it, and the battle seed will still have the new changed value. So we are going to do this. Female 3. And with that, we should be ready to go on our quest for experience. Because you may have noticed we're still all at level 1, and even on the manipulated, glitched run, fighting a final boss at level 1 is not going to be very successful. And so we are going to go ahead and find ourselves some experience. First
That's
off,
what all Dragon Quest is in the end, right? Grinding.
yes, it is the grind.
It's time to grind.
Nice.
But the good news is that we can do all our grinding on one fight, so it's much better.
So, and just like that, we are skipping 90% of the game.
Here we are in the Dark World.
And oops, that is not the correct battle, however. So we will need to try that once more.
So what Vaxor's going to do is he's going to manipulate his way into an encounter with 3 metal babbles, and he's going to kill 2 of them, and then we'll have 1 run away, and he's going to get 26,800 experience, which is going to level the hero to 17 and the other 3 to 18.
Yes. So yes, you now have an idea of what's coming up. So I'm going to begin 3. So one very sneaky thing about setting this up, I was talking earlier about how these specific names set up specific RNG seeds. However, that's also based on the order of the files in memory. Sometimes the game will shift around the files. Sometimes there will be garbage left over from a previous file. So all of that specific data affects what the seed turns out to be. And so last time we didn't quite get it right, so we're going to adjust things, do it once more. So we do need to set up this equipment again. See, we put the club on the pilgrim there. There's a very good reason for that, which we'll see in a moment. And once more, wing over to Rimildar. And this time, hopefully, we will get the battle that we desire.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
also
it looks like we're good.
worth pointing out that the ghost ship doesn't exist in Alfgard, so his timing for his movement doesn't need to be quite as precise.
There we go.
So, oh my goodness, metal babbles, and they are surprised. So we will fight, heal, fight, fight.
And then
How about
spell
that
is going to
crit for 10? Poison Needle with its instant kill effect. We're actually going to run away because we're scared of all this experience, but we fail. And instead, we get 26,800 experience, which means we sit back and level. My
level
dear
time.
host, would you happen to have any donations for us?
Absolutely. All right, well, they speedrun the leveling. I'll try to speedrun these comments. Ortega with $25 says, "My son Command, this is a donation from your father. Just please promise me that if you ever find me and I'm fighting a King Hydra, don't just stand there and watch."
right?
Well,
So Ortega might be a bad father, but he's a bad son for watching.
Mr. Popo donated $25 and said, "I've been looking forward to this Dragon Quest run. Old NES RPGs are some of the most fascinating speedruns in my opinion." Dragon Kuresk donated $10 and said, "Dragon Quest / Warrior got me into gaming as a teen, and I've played most of them. I love seeing them get destroyed utterly. Loved the Dragon Warrior run last year and love the one this year." Here's $25 from Cakestino, who says, I grew up loving the Dragon Quest / Warrior franchise, and I always get so excited seeing the runs during any of the GDQs. Thank you for running these games for a great cause. And Command?
Thank you for all of the donations. So just to go back a little bit about all of the strange stuff that has been going on. We talked a little bit earlier about the seed lock. What this accomplishes for us, aside from just being able to skip encounters, it also lets us work out exactly what's going to happen in a battle. Because what happens in the end with the seed lock is the random numbers turn into a simple counter that goes up from 0 to 255 over and over. One way to think about it is if you think of an RNG, a random number generator, as a deck of cards. And normally a game will take this deck of cards, shuffle it, will draw one at a time, and those are the random numbers, the damage in battle or what have you. What we do with the seed lock is we force the game to stack them all in order. And then the game goes to give us a random number, but it's just pulling up all the aces and then all the twos and so on. Yeah. So when the game goes to find an encounter, this particular game, when it goes to see has an encounter occurred, what it does is, in this example, was the card an ace? So normally, the aces could be anywhere in the deck. You never know when you're going to get an encounter. But with the seed lock, we know all the aces are at the top. And so we arrange to skip those 4, and then we know that for the rest of the deck, we can walk freely. So that's kind of another way to look at this.
Yeah, and then the initial setup for the seed lock is just, it's something he had prepared with the file 2 on his cartridge before starting the run too. Yeah, and
it's not a significant setup. All I did was create a file with that particular name, the same way I did the YPP file that I used to set up this battle. The way you set the seed in this game, the very first seed that the game uses, is by the what's called the checksum. It's the way a game determines whether a file is corrupt or not. If you may have taken an old NES or Super Nintendo cartridge, plugged it in, and it said, oops, your data is corrupt because the battery died. That's how it figures that out. And this checksum, it's a number in the game's memory, controls that initial seed. So by setting a specific name, that will give us a specific seed, which we can then use to manipulate our own game.
And I believe all of these stat gains from the level ups are affected by the seed lock too, so that's putting all of his stats in a known state as far as the upcoming fights.
Yeah, this particular one we are not using seed lock, we are using the different seed that specifically loaded this battle, which is actually a good thing, because when we are using seed lock, and you'll see this actually later because we will get a few more levels in the final dungeon, when we're using seed lock, all of the basic stats, strength, agility, vitality, all of these will only go up at most 1 point per level. They'll either be 0 or 1. So if we were stuck with that, we would be able to get to these levels, but we would probably not be strong enough to survive the final boss rush. So for this particular case, it is good that we have a different seed that will give us higher level ups. So
this category was not run for a long time, and the main reason is a very different reason than most. Vaxerd created the Taz, but correct me if I'm wrong with any of this, but I believe that the community at large was worried about doing a run without corrupting some data on your cartridge and essentially ruining it.
Yes, there was a concern about that. So I've actually looked into this. When I was developing the task, I was looking into the game and seeing exactly how it works. So I'm aware that I figured out that there is no actual danger to the cartridge. There is one possible issue related to that, which is, if you recall the stick slime item earlier, it's a glitched item. If you use that, what happens is the game essentially hard locks. It goes off, tries to execute memory from the game's hardware registers, and I don't think it could cause any hardware damage, but it's certainly not a design feature of the system, and so that is something that you do not want to do. But other than that, the rest of this, all of this glitching is entirely within the program. It is an error that was made in the program, but it is not an error or a problem with the system itself. So this is safe, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Also, if anybody's getting concerned, by the way, about the health of Vexerd's thumb from having to mash through all of these level up messages, he actually can just hold down the A button and buffer them all frame perfect.
Yep.
But yeah, basically once Vaxerd determined that everything was safe, he did the world's first console run on hardware. I think this was about 1.5 years ago, and he's had the world record ever since, gradually lowering it.
Yeah, it's was, I believe, about 1 year ago. that I did the first run on console, and I've made various tweaks to the run since then. Got it down to a 44-44 is my current record, which I kind of like,
It's
Nice little
symmetry.
number.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is, as you can see, this is still going on. So maybe you can squeeze in a few more donations.
Sure, I've got a ton of great ones here, but probably one of the most relevant right now, I feel, is from Nopsled909090, who donated $50 and said, "The amount of preparation from Vaxherd is awe-inspiring. Thank you for your dedication and effort for all of our entertainment and charity. Keep doing what you're doing."
Thank you for your comment and donation.
Leo37 donated $5 and said, "I remember renting DW3 for 1 week with my hard-earned lawn mowing money. Speaking of, the battery on the cartridge didn't work, so I left my Nintendo on for 1 week while I played it every night."
Oh no, that's
Awesome
unfortunate.
glitches. Vinkara donated $25 and said, "I'm donating for my husband Bakar, as this was his first RPG ever, and he's too entranced by the run to remember to donate." Less than 3.
Sounds like that other guy for Castlevania, huh?
Well, I'm certainly glad you're enjoying it.
Is it the same guy? No.
So yeah, we are actually getting pretty close to the end here. I guess one other thing to go back and cover, that glitching that I was doing, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but the reason all of that works is because as just a really lucky coincidence, when we step out onto the world map with nobody alive, and we were talking about how the game will try and look at lots of memory because it doesn't know how to count from 1 to 0, as it happens, there is one character location which we can control, and what it is it is the pointer. If you think of the game's music as like a piece of sheet music, and you have a finger sort of pointing to that music saying, where are we in the melody? That pointer is a number in the game's memory, and what we can do is use that to control which piece of data we overwrite. So, for example, by stepping on a certain note, we modify the first item in the second character's or the fourth character's inventory, and that is how we can do this as accurately as we can. In the task, the tool-assisted speedrun, we can actually take more steps per cycle because we can do frame-perfect input. I decided requiring frame-perfect input was not a good thing for a real-time run, and so I cut down the number of steps, and that was how I was able to make it work in real time. And with that, we are just about done at last.
There we go.
Now for the most important part of the notes. Oh, by the way, notice how we're in critical health
Yes.
now, too.
Yes, so, so I'll pull up the text box here. You can see this green indicates that you're in critical health. Notice we never actually lost any hit points. It's just that we gained so much in our maximum hit points that the game thinks we were critical. But we're fine now. So we're going to come back here, do one more save because we want to go back to seed lock that I was talking about a moment ago. And so we're going to have to come back here to Louisa and save. And as Professor was just saying, the most important note in the run: do not reset early. So you notice there was a short delay between when I said leave, which is just to get her to save, and when she started putting her next text up. During that time, the game is actually saving. And if you reset before the text comes up, it will say your file is corrupted and you will have lost your run. So we do not want to do that. Fortunately, we did not, and so we are ready to get on to the final bit of the run here. So do one quick bit of item movement here and get all of our fancy equipment on our hero, and let us get going. So.
Going to fight Baramos, right?
Who?
The king wanted us to fight.
Who is this Baramos guy? So do one quick encounter skip here. Need 2 heals here because we are in a forest and the encounter rate is slightly higher in forests. And 1 heal, turns out, is not enough to skip the encounter there, and so we do that. We skip the encounter, and again, we have about 200 or so steps of free movement. So you will be seeing a little bit more in the way of using heals, or a little bit in terms of number of heals, because going forward, we need to not only skip encounters, we also need to set the RNG to very specific locations, very specific values.
Another one of the items that he glitched into his inventory was a wizard's ring, which is it's normally an MP it is an MP restoration item, but when he uses it, it has a chance to randomly break. I mean, it's not going to break because of his manipulation, but the game checking to see if it's supposed to break or not changes the RNG in a different way from a heal spell, so that gives him kind of extra flexibility with how to set up the manipulation route.
This final section of the game, we've done a lot of setup up to this point, and now finally we're doing a large section that sort of looks more like, a general RNG manipulation section. It works a little bit differently than in Dragon Warrior 1, but essentially the meat of it is we still get to skip all our random encounters, and we have to manipulate our way carefully through some forced encounters. The first of which are coming up in this room here.
So I'm going to, I did 2 heals you saw earlier, and I'm doing 3 uses of the Wizard's Ring here. And then I'm going to do 7 more heals. And again, this is to set up a very specific RNG value when the battle starts, because we need to not just skip encounters, we need to control what happens in the encounters that we do get, which is the boss battles. So that is 4. And the convenient thing here is I can just look at how many MP I have left to see how many heals I've used. So this is going to be number 7. And now we can go ahead and open that door. And it closes behind us. Oh no, what are we going to do?
I'm just going to walk to the right a little bit and then walk to the left a little bit. And... Oh Lord, look at that.
We are the guards of the chamber. You will have to defeat us first.
Well,
and that's important.
Yeah.
Well, as it happens,
we have a spell called Defeat, and it works.
Yep. We have thus defeated the Granite Titans, but wait, there's more. Literally.
More Granite Titans.
So you see there are 3 sets of pairs of statues in this room. You have to defeat all 3 pairs consecutively. And through RNG manipulation, we can make sure that defeat spell works every time.
And their command is going to gain is level 18.
And you can see how we're getting just the 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 there. And that is the effect of the seed lock.
You'll see that at the very end of the game, too, after the final boss is defeated, a little nice effect of that.
Yeah.
So here he's healing twice and using the ring twice to set his RNG where he wants it. So that heal spell also makes sure defeat works and that the RNG is in where he wants it. And here, all the rest of our party's going to gain level 19. So we're actually all going to be 20 by the time we hit Zoma, which is going to be what we need.
Yeah, well, it would probably not be recommended for a vanilla run. You probably want to be closer to 40.
Yeah, the mid-30s at least.
Yeah, but we have the power of math on our side, so we are going to go ahead with what we've got. So with that, we've got our 3 sets of Granite Titans down. We very conveniently just learned the spell Step Guard, so we're going to go ahead and use that. Walk on this wonderful barrier damage tile stuff, and we are going to look around and gosh, a stairway. So next we have this wonderful D-pad maze here. So you can see all these diamond tiles on the floor. Now you have to be very careful because all of these tiles, they will change the direction you move when you press your D-pad. There's a very specific path that we have to take to make sure we don't fall in any of these pits. Because if you fall in the pit, you're going to fall down to the floor, you're going to waste steps, and you're going to have to reset. But we don't want to do that, and so we're just going to not fall in tiles. So.
And you want to know how you do that, guys? You hold up.
Just go spoiling my secrets, why don't you? So, yeah. So that is done, and we now come down here, and we're going to do another encounter skip and manipulation. So this is going to be 6 heals and 2 wizard rings. So I hope you all like the spell effect because... yeah, I'm going to get to hear it quite a bit. So, wizard ring. And we're going to head down to the next floor. So some of you may have watched me run this game at RPG Limit Break last year. That was actually the first time I'd run it in the marathon. In my route at the time, I had 4 extra steps that I needed to take before going down these stairs. I did not take them. And very bad things happened afterwards. However, in a wonderful coincidence, I discovered that I do not, in fact, need to take those steps there. And so I have now moved them down to this floor. And I will be taking them right up here. We are going to walk up here. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to head across this bridge. And we are going to discover...
there's our man Ortega.
Our hero fighting a monster alone. Poor guy has been trapped down at the bottom of this volcano for who knows how long, fighting Ortega. Still going on. But spoilers, he's not going to last very long.
So yeah, so the RNG guarantees that Ortega loses in 2 turns. So that's pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting fact to note, by the way, that Ortega dies here, and we're going to get a little message from him, his dying words to his son, who he does not realize is right here. Poor guy. But as it happens, when the programmers designed this, they actually put in a message for what would happen if Ortega won. It will say Ortega used up the last of his strength and passed away, or things of that nature. What? What?
No treasure for you.
Sage's Stone.
What's Sage's Stone? I don't need
What's a
Sage's Stone. I've got
Sage's
math.
Yeah.
But yes, the programmers put in a special message for that. But as it turns out, it is impossible for Ortega to win that battle. Mathematically impossible. I actually wrote a simulator to test that out because I was curious. There are about 268 million possibilities for the game state when you enter that battle. Every single case, Ortega loses. So it ended up being an unnecessary thing. But I like to call it out because it's an example of good programming.
Yeah.
They may have had some glitches in this game, but that thing they did right. And as a programmer myself, I like to call out when people do good things. So that was a great step.
But now it's time for revenge.
Yep.
Now it is time for revenge. Got revenge for our poor father. So I am actually going to have to concentrate on these menus. So if you guys want to...
Yeah, so actually, coincidentally, this being the first fight in the boss rush, this is the one that's going to take the longest to kill. He's going to take 4 turns to kill King Hydra.
And then I think Raptor mentioned the parry glitch earlier on in the run, and it's going to be used fairly extensively in these boss fights too, where he's going to select the parry command and then to move on to the next character, then cancel back, and then the game doesn't actually remove the parry status, and that halves the amount of damage they take on the next round.
And so here, he queued up with Spell, he queued up Revive because he knew Fight was going to die. And since Spell went first, Fight still gets his Infermost off there.
Very confusing terminology.
And for the most part, he's using Infermost or the Sword of Kings, which casts Infermost when you use it in order to do high damage attacks. Few exceptions, though.
And there's level 19 on command. And so here he's going to use give the Wizard Ring over and start using it on his other characters.
It's important there that he picked Transfer and not Discard, too, because this game doesn't actually have any confirmation text to throw away items.
Yes, and every now and then it will, when you press something on the D-pad, it will double input, and bad things can happen. Fortunately, I have never had that happen, and it has not happened here. So,
you know where that actually happens to me a lot, and it's annoying, is the A button.
yes, that is another thing that, it happens to me from time to time as well. It's very frustrating, but we learn to deal with it. So going into our second battle here.
Yeah, it's a Baramos thing, I guess.
Yeah. Baramos cameo, I guess. But this is ordinarily kind of a nasty fight just because Baramos can do 1 or 2 actions per turn, and you can cast Explodette, which is, I believe, the strongest multi-target attack spell in the game. But through the manipulation, he's actually guaranteeing that Baramos Bomus only gets 1 action per turn.
And this is Baramos Bomus's last round of life. Press F to pay respects. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So the remaining...
So I want you to pay attention here because this, if you're not used to this run, this is going to look weird. But Vaxford's only going to heal his pilgrims before going into the next fight. And notice his wizard's at 12 HP.
It's not a problem.
It's not a problem at all.
Everything's going to be fine. Ooh, wrong one. Okay, well, we can deal with that. We can deal with that. Everything's going to be fine. Trust me.
Yep, so here what's going on is that surround spell is going to ensure that old zombie Baramos here doesn't actually do any damage like that.
Yeah, because Surround just lowers the accuracy pretty substantially of the affected character or monster.
He's going to miss again, and then here's turn 3 where we salute our boy Bearmusgonis and wish him a happy afterlife.
Do undead creatures have an afterlife? Or
I
is
don't
it an
know.
after death?
Afterlife.
Yeah. And here's where level 20 happens for command, and we'll have our final levels for a Zoma fight. And command being level 20 is pretty essential, as we're going to see in a minute.
Yeah. So you noticed I should have healed fight and spell in the last battle. I didn't. However, we can actually work around that problem. How are we going to do this? You know, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a little preview of what's coming up. Heal more item. Going to heal more command. And then you may have noticed we had this interesting item called the Staff of Change in our inventory. We're going to use that real quick. And look, we all turned into sages.
That's right. So here's Zoma. And
Oh, this music is so good.
this is
It's
great
amazing.
music.
And what you're going to see here is what has become a very commonplace way of dealing with certain enemies in RPGs, but I believe this was the first, at the very least, North American released RPG to employ it, so I think that's pretty neat.
And see, the hero has 1 HP left, so and
good, all
so does
good.
spell. And so that's why these levels were pretty essential. And we're gonna go through with our humanitarian effort here and
Yeah.
give Bearmus the healing, or not Bearmus, but Zoma the healing he needs.
Yep.
The herbs have a widely fluctuating range of damage, but of course we've manipulated our RNG to ensure that we do all the values that are high enough to defeat him with over 1,000 HP.
Yeah, I mean, healing item. Oh, by the way, yeah, this is a debuff attack that does nothing if
Yeah,
we don't
because
have
we don't
buffs.
have any buffs up. We don't need them. And
And
GG's
there he
over.
goes.
Press F to pay respects.
So time is not yet, by the way. There is a little bit more walking to do.
Yeah, but just to finish that though, being able to cause damage to Zoma is an intended game mechanic that was kind of put in as a kind of an Easter egg by the developers. And but if you cast Heal More or Heal All or something, it does about the same damage as it heals you. But they kind of forgot to actually assign herbs a proper damage range against Zoma, so it actually it does way, way, way more damage than it would heal you as a result.
You saw on the previous screen there were a bunch of random holes popping up. They normally appear in random places on the screen, but again, because we're in a seed lock, they appear in a nice diagonal line, and I always thought that looked really nice.
Yeah. So interesting story about that. When I was first developing the task, I got to that point. I spent about a week, I think. It was just solid math, working back and forth through those 4 battles, trying to find the combination of actions that would let me survive. And I finally got through it, and I got to that point. I thought the game had soft locked. I thought the seed lock effect that I had caused the game to get stuck, and I was quite upset for about 10 seconds or so until it finally finished up. But I thought the game had soft lock, and I was really disappointed because I thought what I thought was a really great route, and it was going to be spoiled at the very last moment, right after after I kill the final boss, and yet I can't complete the run. So. But
Yeah, because like in most Dragon Quest / Dragon Warrior games, you have to go home. You have to report on your glorious deeds after killing the final boss. And that's where timing is going to end.
Yeah.
So I myself run all 4 Dragon Warriors, and pretty much all the work I've done recently with Dragon Warrior 2 and 3 is a direct result of the pioneering vision that Vaxherd created with his tool-assisted analysis of both games. And it goes so far deeper than you can just see through a run like this. So hopefully we've done a decent job of explaining to you exactly what's going on.
But before we're done, though, we have one last
Yes.
bit of business to attend to.
I believe the slime ending incentive was met.
It was indeed.
Excellent. So let's see who our true heroes are.
And by the way, the comments over here have been very appreciative, so you've been doing a great job at explaining things.
Thanks.
So
Okay.
if anybody's a Star Wars fan, which I can't imagine anybody is in a group like this, the hero gets all the glory here, and I feel like the other 3 party members are all Chewbacca, and they don't get a medal. Like, they don't even get mentioned.
So we may have to do this a few times until we get the specific character.
Keep in mind,
because
because the Staff of Change is a quest item you normally need to turn in to get the Sailor's Thigh Bone earlier, but he because of the glitching, he has one at this point, which has a pretty fun effect, basically, if you end the game with it.
Yeah, so we're coming up on time here, so if you get ready on that. And time.
That was 1 hour, 9 minutes, and 55 seconds.
Well, given all the mistakes in the beginning, that's probably not a bad time. I was hoping to get under an hour, but well, things happened. Nonetheless, I'm glad I was able to get through it, and I hope you all enjoyed it.
And thus the legend of the slimes was born.
I give you the true heroes of Alfgard.
The slimes.
Yes. So if any of you, those of you who've played Dragon Quest games, you probably know how you come across a slime somewhere in a town and says, "Hey, I'm not a bad slime." Now you know where they come from. So yeah, that will I guess close out the run. Thank you to my wonderful couch for helping me through.
Yeah.
So shout outs to the Dragon Quest Discord, everybody there who's running the game. Shout outs to the Japanese Dragon Quest community. I'm sure they all knew all of this stuff years before I even looked at it. Dragon Quest III in particular, there was a Super Famicom, which is a Super Nintendo remake of that game in Japan. It is the big speedrun game of Japan. It's Japan's Super Mario 64, and it's just got a huge following over there.
Yeah, like it's the only game where there's a PB requirement to get on their leaderboard site at all.
Yes, it's amazing. So they're all wonderful people. Shout outs to Dave DFWM on Task Videos, who actually first worked out a task route using the glitch that I used here. I took that and I made some improvements. I added the seed lock glitch, but he was the one who first came out with the route, so shout out to that. Shout outs to TaskBot for being awesome. And yeah, I guess that will do it for me.